Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Anzaldo, and I'm a member of this church. I use the pronouns she and her. And of course, I have to take the important reminder to silence all electronic devices as we start our service. We want to take a few moments just to say welcome to any guests we might have here with us. We're really glad that you're here, as well as, of course, all of our regulars and familiar faces that make this their church home. If you want to receive communications from us, if you're new, you can complete one of the guest cards that is on the credenza at the front door as you are coming in. It's a little card that you write your name and information on, and you can return those either to the greeters, place them on the credenza back out there, or place them in the offering basket when that comes around a little bit later in the service. We don't have a written order of service, but each of you may have been provided with kind of a little folder cover with a chalice on the front that has important information about us. And inside of that, if you grab one, was a slip of paper for any joys and sorrows or joys and concerns you may want to share. Those get collected also when the offering basket comes around, and you can drop that in there, and they will be read later in the service. And when you're leaving today, if you do have one of those little folders with the chalice on it, if you would stick it on the table in the back, there's a little blue basket back there because we do reuse them. We have a couple of announcements for today. So after our service today, we do have a second hour program that is featuring a review of several books that have been critical of the UUA and UU denomination. They are looking at concerns related to social justice issues, censorship, and defamation, reportedly. So Tom Botsford is going to be presenting those sessions. I believe that the event is taking place in the library, and it will be following the service, after we do our coffee and kind of regroup and get everybody in there, as we sometimes have to kind of wrangle everyone. We also have another announcement. Last week, as many of you know, that we're here for our annual congregational meeting. The congregation voted to approve us applying to the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, to be designated as an LGBTQIA plus welcoming congregation. And the committee didn't waste any time. The application has actually been filed with the UUA, I want to say yesterday, and they say it'll be about a month for the committee that looks at those to review them and get back, and that will be updated to the congregation as that proceeds forward. There will be an interview at that time, so you'll hear more about that as time goes on. And I also want to let everyone know that some of you may have seen this on Bobby Van Dusen's Facebook page, but he was performing in an old-time piano competition that was yesterday at 1 o'clock. He did make it into the semifinals, and he's performing today at 1:30, and it is available to watch live on YouTube. You can, if you follow Bobby on Facebook or you look him up, the link is available, so that's just a really fun and exciting thing for him. He's phenomenal, as you all know, so it's a great thing to check out and see him at that level performing in the semifinals. Today we have a guest speaker today, as many of you may have noticed, someone that might not be familiar, which is Ms. Rachelle Burns, a colleague of mine. She's the director of TRIO Student Support Services at Pensacola State College, and she's also the chair of the EscaRosa Suicide Prevention Coalition, which serves our local area, Escambia, Santa Rosa, as well as even going out to Okaloosa, Walton counties. You'll hear more about that a little bit later in the service, but I just wanted to mention if you're noticing someone here that was new to our congregation. Our theme for May is beauty, and Rachel's going to be sharing a talk later in the service entitled The Power of Connectedness. We might also reflect on the beauty of connection, and hopefully that'll be woven throughout our service today. Our human connections, as well as the beauty of our interdependent web of life that we recognize within our 7 principles as UUs. So speaking of beauty, we're going to be enjoying a powerfully touching song here in a second by Rhiannon Giddens, who some have called a national treasure. She's just, if you haven't ever heard her sing or perform, I think you're really going to enjoy it, or if you have, you get another chance to hear that. So we're going to go ahead and hear that for our centering music. Our chalice lighting words for today are called Let the Chalice Connect Us. by Catherine Callahan for our chalice lighting words. As the chalice is lit, let us come together into the sacred space we have created. Let the cares of the day fall away and know that there is a place for quiet reflection, for a pause in our lives, for breathing into our true selves. Let what is said and felt here add richness to the dimensions of our lives and spiritual practices. We are strong together in community. We share the experience of being human. Let the warmth of the chalice lit during our time together connect us and carry us into the world. Our opening words today are by the poet Orensi, a poem titled Ankosi, which is an Anishinaabe word meaning everything is connected. The Anishinaabe are the native people of the Great Lakes region of this continent. Poem Ankosi. Don't believe what people will tell you. There is a center to the world. We all hold it sometimes when we open our palms to the wind. Don't try to divide the sea. Fish flow through every line. Muskrat and butterfly do not care for borders, claimed or unclaimed. Trees find every barren rock. All the walls you have built telling you who you are, tear them down. Keep the stone. Sun and moon can fill the same sky. And when you are told you do not belong, feel the wind. It knows you. It knows your childhood home. It knows the thunderbird's wings have no end. Listen to its song. At this time, we can rise as you're willing and able for the recitation of our covenant, and you may want to remain standing as we also do our opening hymn afterward. Is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And I think the choir will come up and help us with our opening hymn, which is Love Will Guide Us, which is number 131 in our hymnal. As the choir is making their way back down, I'm going to go ahead and share a time for all ages with us this morning. Have any of you ever flown a kite? Yeah. It can be quite fun to fly a kite in an open area, a park or a beach when the wind is just right. I know I've done it, and it's sometimes had some challenges as well. I'm not an expert by any means, but it's still a fun thing to do with very minimal investment. So the main parts of a kite are the body and the tail. You can see it in the picture there, which both go up into the air when the kite is flown. And the flying line or the string connects the kite, which is up in the air, with the operator or the person down on the ground who's flying the kite, like the child in this picture here. So today I'm going to share a story about a kite. The story contains a lesson that relates to today's topic of connectedness. So a parent and a child were flying a kite. The child was carefully watching the kite soar and dip in the sky. After some time, the child said, "Because of the string, the kite is not able to go any higher. I want the kite to go higher and higher." The parent smiled and said, "Okay, I will break the string then," and snapped the string from the kite. The kite briefly went higher, and then it just fell to the ground. The child was very sad to see the kite crash and asked the parent what happened. The parent sat beside the child and explained, "In life, we may reach a certain height and feel that there are some things that are not letting us go any further, like our community, our family, friends, or our values. We may wander away from those things or just forget about them, or we may reject them altogether. We may want to break free from these things that we believe may be stopping us from going higher. But remember, like the string on a kite, a string that represents our community, our family, friends, our values, they may be the very connection that helps us to stay stable as we get out there into the heights." So a kite can't fly without a string, and we as people cannot function successfully without a connection that helps us to remain stable and supported in life. So at this time, we'll go ahead and do the children's recessional. Sing the children out. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Okay, it's our offering time. So traditionally within our church, we collect a special offering on the 5th Sunday where we take up a collection for an organization in our community that aligns with our values here at UUCP, remembering that our mission is to celebrate diversity, strive for justice, and inspire love. And today we're taking up a collection for the EscaRosa Suicide Prevention Coalition, and Rachel's going to come up here in a second and tell us more about that. As the offering basket is going around, you can either donate through the text to give number that's up there. You can write a check or cash as long as you designate in the check that it's for the 5th Sunday, and then the church will gather those and send that on to the coalition. And remember to put your joys and concerns slips or your contact cards in the basket as it comes around. I'm going to go ahead and let Rachel tell us a little bit more about the coalition.
Good morning. Good morning. So before I get too far into it, and so you're not distracted by my accent, I do want to confirm that I am from the south of England. Let me just get my papers in order here. There we go. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very grateful for the invitation to come and speak, and just want to tell you briefly a little bit about the EscaRosa Suicide Prevention Coalition. The coalition started because Pensacola State College, where I work, got a suicide prevention grant for the college, and I was helping to implement that grant. And as I implemented it, I realized that there really wasn't much going on in the community in terms of coordinated suicide prevention efforts. And so with the college's permission, I was able to get an AmeriCorps Vista. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's kind of like the Peace Corps, but in the US, and a VISTA stands for Volunteer in Service to America. And I had 2 years, I had 2 separate VISTAs who assisted me in starting the coalition. So in 2018, the coalition was born, and We have had from the very beginning a variety of stakeholders. The idea is to include as many people as possible who are interested in suicide prevention and who are perhaps working in related fields. The idea was to break down silos and to start working together to coordinate that work, because I have a firm belief that the synergy that we create when we work together on something is far better than the individual work that we do. And the stakeholders that we have are all working towards education, advocacy, and strategic interventions for suicide prevention. We don't believe that awareness is enough, although it's part. We actually need to work to prevent it, so it needs to be action-oriented as well. And as a coalition, we work towards this vision to eliminate suicide in Escambia and Santa Rosa counties particularly. It's quite a bold goal. Some people might say, well, why don't you just want to reduce it? That certainly would be something we would like to have as an interim goal, but our ultimate goal is to reduce it. There is a lot of discussion in the field of suicide prevention that talks about the fact that suicide is perhaps one of the only completely preventable forms of death if we can reach people in time. So we have a general membership meeting monthly, and we have task forces that also meet at those monthly meetings, but also sometimes in between. The task forces at the moment focus on veterans, youth, Zero Suicide, which is a project, a grant that's available from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and we'd like to see one. We'd like to be able to get one for this area so that we can work, particularly in larger organizations like hospitals and healthcare systems, to prevent suicide. And then we also have we call it our community presence task force, because we're a fairly new organization, so we want to build our presence in the community. So the pandemic certainly made an impact on us. Obviously, we launched in 2018, and then in 2020, it felt a little bit like the brakes were put on, as most of us have probably experienced in different things that we've done. But we've still been able to do some great work. We brought what's called crisis text line. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a number that you can text. 741-741 is the number. And you can text anything to start a conversation. But there's also a way to get for a whole community to have a keyword that is just for their community. So we partnered with the United Way, and we were able to get a keyword for this area, and that keyword is golf, G-U-L-F. And when someone texts golf to 741-741, it starts the conversation, but it also indicates that they're from this area. It doesn't mean there's no individual information tracked, it's confidential. It just provides us with aggregate information about the types of things that people are texting about, and the times and days and types of demographics. So it gives us information to better help people. We've also coordinated, with the help of community partners, mental health first aid training and assist trainings. We've had billboard campaigns. We've done state and national advocacy work with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We've partnered with United for a Good Cause, which primarily at the moment is working in Okaloosa and Walton counties, but we worked with them to bring what we call Hope Squads to the school systems in Escambia and Santa Rosa counties as well. And we've partnered at various events, including with NAMI Pensacola, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We did an Ending the Silence walk last year, and we hope to do that again this year on Labor Day. We'd love to have UUCP have a team maybe to come and walk and to be sponsored. We've also done things like the Veterans Task Force have reached out to local outdoor sports shops and I like to spell it PAWN shops, because when I say it out loud, it sounds like something different, and I don't want to say that because we don't say our R's in England, so it sounds odd. But we have a focus on gun safety and gun safety storage, and so we've partnered with them, providing gun locks and things like that, and getting the word out about suicide prevention. We're also supporting the United Way of West Florida and 211 as they prepare to become a crisis center for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. At the moment, any calls that go to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline go to Pinellas County, because that's the closest crisis center that we have that will handle those calls. And so we are wanting to get it back into our area, because we believe that this is the place. People in this community know what resources are available and how to connect people. So we're working on that. So we're very thankful for all those things. We are a Florida nonprofit. We've applied for our 501c3. We're still waiting to hear. We were told when we applied, if 6 months, in 6 months you haven't heard anything, contact us. And so we did that, and they said, yeah, we're still working on it. So we're hoping to hear soon. I'm sure they're struggling at the IRS to process all those nonprofit applications. So for the future, we're looking to have a more diverse board to reflect our community in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and so on. But we also want to diversify in terms of skill sets. We have a lot of people on our board at the moment who are connected to mental health, and I'm really looking to expand that and find people who are also skilled in finance and the law and marketing, and to get some other skills on board. So if that fits you or anyone you know who has a passion for suicide prevention, I'll be glad to talk with you after the service. We also just got a grant from Sunshine Health for crisis text line materials and another billboard campaign, and to help us increase our training. So we're very excited about the future, and I'm very thankful, very, very thankful for the offering today, and I really appreciate you furthering our work and being a partner with us in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm so proud to be a part of the coalition and glad that you're able to be here today. So we're going to move into our joys and sorrows, and just to kind of start that, the psychologist and Buddhist practitioner and teacher Tara Brach has observed, when we open to the vulnerability in our caring, there's a lot of freedom. We're really opening to both sorrow and joy. So opening ourselves to joy and sorrow, being vulnerable, is a sort of spiritual practice in itself. So we'll now share significant milestones in the life of our congregation as part of our nurturing of our beloved community. Rachel's going to light the candles for me. We have quite a few here. So first, of course, we want to light a candle of sorrow for the families in Uvalde, Texas, and all of the victims and those affected by the shooting that occurred at Robb Elementary this past week. We also want to light a candle of sorrow for the death of Monty Mountcastle, longtime congregant here, who passed away this past week, and there has been outreach with Kay and his family as well. Last Wednesday, a small group of persons scattered Barbara Goggins' ashes in the church memorial garden. As per Barbara's wishes, her sister and sister-in-law were here from Delaware, and fortunately the rains held off so that task could be accomplished. The 11 of the folks then went to Barbara's favorite restaurant, McGuire's, to reminisce the good times that we spent with her. So thanks to Lori Winterberg, Jay Butcher, Michael Newcomb, and any others who cleaned up the garden so that it looked very good for that. Mary Beth Ramsey, who's newly been attending the congregation here, would like a candle of joy. She has a new job and is quite excited to begin that adventure and appreciates all the good vibes from UUCP. Erin asked that we send thoughts for her sister-in-law and nephew who are going through a frightening time right now. We'll be thinking of them. Lisa asks for concern for her neighbor who lost their dog yesterday. Laura shares that the Wolvertons are back home after their travels. Jack is sick with COVID, as well as Laura's brother in Boston, and all of them are fully vaccinated, so the symptoms haven't been too serious. And I think that is it for that. So we'll light one more candle for all of those thoughts and concerns that are deeply held but are unspoken today. Thank you. And I will turn it over to Miss Rachel Burns, who's going to give our message called The Power of Connectedness.
So I am, again, really thankful to be here today. I consider it an honor and a privilege, and I'm thankful to Lauren for inviting me. Thought she was a little tricky. She invited me to come and share about the coalition, and then she said, well, would you like to share a message too? And how about lighting the candles? All these requests happen sort of days or weeks after each other, so I know how it works now, so I'll know if I'm invited again to watch out. I'll be roped into everything. Actually, it's a joy to be able to do that. I'm just teasing. So I chose this topic because of its significance as a protective factor in suicide prevention. Connectedness is the most important protective factor in suicide prevention. But I honestly believe the reason for that significance is because it is vital for us as humans. So it's not just important in suicide prevention, it's important in our lives. Recently, I helped a family member move back to Florida from out west. On the way back to Florida, we broke down. It was a very stressful time. We were stuck in Amarillo, Texas for 3 days waiting for the vehicle to be fixed. And during the breakdown in Texas, I realized how important my connection to my family and friends and my church family, my faith community, were. The family member that I was traveling with does not have the same level of connection, and she has struggled with connectedness. And she made reference to the fact that my phone was constantly pinging or buzzing or vibrating. And she was like, wow, I find that so annoying. You get so many messages. And I said, no. I said, that's a reminder to me of how much I'm loved and how connected I am. That's my community. And I suddenly realized the importance of that. So what is connectedness? Connectedness is not the same as connectivity. Sometimes you hear people say that. That has to do with internet connection. So not quite the same thing. It means to be joined or linked, to belong or have an affinity. The CDC defines it as the degree to which a person or a group is socially close, interrelated, or shares resources with other persons or groups. Connectedness can be connection with other individuals, it can be connection among family members, it can be connection to a community organization, or it can be the connection of groups or organizations to their cultural traditions and history. Connectedness and support can be enhanced through social programs directed at specific groups, such as older adults or LGBTQ+ youth, as well as through activities that support the development of positive and supportive communities. But I think all those definitions for me don't get at the key piece of connectedness. To me, the important piece of connectedness is the emotional element to it. Feeling connected versus feeling isolated or alone. It's both an emotional and a spiritual connection. It's a sense of belonging. The definition did talk about that sense of belonging. And in suicide prevention work, Dr. Thomas Joyner is very well known for his research into suicide for the purposes of suicide prevention, and he put together a theory many years back called the interpersonal theory of suicide, and it talks about the importance of belonging, and that when that sense of belonging is missing, that's one of the factors that makes someone vulnerable or more at risk for suicide. So you might think in this day and age, well, we're so connected with social media especially, and there is a role of social media. There are ways that people can connect, and sometimes it's genuine connection, but many times it's not. It's not the full connection of deep human relationship. There's typically not genuine deep sharing or relationship building that happens on social media. And it's often focused on external factors or people commenting on social situations. Connection is about human relationship. And for that to happen, we need more than just a social or technological connection, which is why it was so hard during the pandemic for so many people. So why is connectedness so important? We were made for relationship. We were made for connection. Even the most extreme introverts need it. Now, there's a myth that's pervasive in our culture that if you're an introvert, you don't really need people. In fact, you'd rather not be around them. And that's actually not true. So introverts and extroverts it's just a way to describe how someone gets their energy. So an introvert gets their energy by being alone, but it doesn't mean that they don't need to connect with others. And an extrovert gets their energy by being around people. And many of us are somewhere on that continuum. But it doesn't mean that you don't need others. We all need others, even if you're an introvert. Many of you have probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need food, water, air, warmth, and rest to survive physically. But we also need, and this is the second layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need healthy, positive relationships to survive psychologically. And I would argue that we need them to thrive. We want to do more than just survive. We want to be able to thrive. And there's a difference between just surviving and thriving. So another interesting aspect of connectedness, which I discovered in doing a little more research on it for this talk, is that it's actually worse for your health than smoking, high blood pressure, or obesity, and a lack of is actually worse for you. It has more emotional and physical impact on your life if you are isolated and lonely. Mother Teresa once said that loneliness is the most terrible form of poverty. Connectedness keeps us tethered. It keeps us tethered to life. Like an astronaut working on a spaceship whose cable to the ship is severed when they're on the outside, perhaps fixing something that's broken, and they float into space. We've probably all seen those movies, right? We need that connection. We don't want to float into space. I loved the kite story that Lauren shared. It seemed very appropriate. It was interesting because I was going to share with you, for those of you that have never seen or read the book, The Invisible String by Patricia Cast. It's a book about our connection to loved ones who have died. And I think that connection in living relationships is I think of it more as like an invisible cable rather than a string, because a cable provides power. It provides love and energy and purpose, the purpose that we need to continue in life when things are hard. And they will get hard. And when we struggle, and we will struggle. And that's why it's so important in suicide prevention, because we need people to feel that they have others helping them, helping provide the power, energy, and love that they need when they don't feel that they can hold it for themselves. We can be surrounded by others, but still feel lonely or disconnected. I'm sure all of us have felt that at times. When we're in times of depression or discouragement, we can be in a crowd and feel very lonely. There are people who are particularly at risk for suicide when there's a lack of connectedness, and who are just particularly at risk for feeling lonely. The elderly, youth, perhaps surprisingly to some of you, particularly those who are in the LGBTQ+ community. Interestingly enough, older white males, middle-aged and up, may appear to have connection on the outside, families, friends, but sometimes their identity is in their work, and the cultural norms around masculinity can prevent true connection. And so sometimes there's not a genuine connection, and many times they're at risk for suicide because they don't have that connectedness that they need. We're all likely to experience disconnection or loneliness at some point in our lives. In fact, 1 in 4 Americans say they have no one they can confide in or would call a close friend. That to me is really sad. It's a very sad statistic. The good news is we can change that. So how can we build connection? So some of us may already experience connectedness, but for others it's elusive. Many people experience disconnection due to abuse or neglect in childhood or other factors that are considered adverse childhood experiences. It can be hard to build relationships when you haven't had a healthy model of how to do that, and when you experience brokenness emotionally and spiritually, as well as relationally. But we can build connection with others when we don't have much already, or when we find it hard to do so. So one way we can do it is by looking towards those that perhaps we're drawn to. Now, I will put a caveat in there. It needs to be someone that is a healthy person emotionally, and that you're drawn to them for healthy reasons. So if you need to perhaps enter into a therapeutic relationship with a mental health professional in order to help you figure out what does a healthy relationship look like, it's a wonderful thing to do, and that can promote connectedness. We can seek to build relationship with those that we're drawn to. We can invite them for coffee. Perhaps it's someone that you've met at the public library. You see them regularly in your local grocery store, and they smile and they just seem to have a really warm energy about them, and you'd like to get to know them. For those of you perhaps who are more extroverted, it might not be quite as difficult to invite them to come for coffee or to chat sometime. You can also focus on groups already in your life, already existent, even if there's not a strong connection. So sometimes that could be a church, a faith-based community of some kind. It could be a sports group or a fitness class that you go to. It could be a hobby that you pursue. And once you've identified someone, you can look for ways to increase connection. So you might already have connections with people, but you don't necessarily feel that there's a deep connection or a deeper connection. We were made to be seen and heard. We have a deep need to be seen and heard, and sometimes that's not met within family, and sometimes our families aren't existent. Perhaps we've lost families. So it's always a good idea, as you get to know someone, to invite them to perhaps the next level of connection or connectedness. Again, invite them for coffee. It might be texting someone a word of encouragement. So in my work in suicide prevention, I have often connected with lots of people, and recently a friend of mine at work told me about a family she knew who had lost their son to suicide. And she and I went and met with the family, and we talked with them, and the mother of the young man who had died, it was a very big group, that all the siblings and aunts and uncles and cousins came, and we just sat and talked. But the mother was very quiet. Obviously, she experienced a profound loss. And suicide is something that touches all of us on one level or another, but there are varying degrees of that. And so I asked if it was okay if I followed up with her and just to connect with her a little more. And so I connected with her through text, and then we chatted, and I've continued to check in with her. And she has expressed that it has been something that has been very helpful for her, because she feels untethered. She feels, even though she has a loving family and she feels connected to them, she needed another connection with someone who understood the impact of suicide on a parent's life. Not that I've experienced it as a parent, for which I'm very grateful, but I've talked to enough parents and I've studied it enough to know the profound impact that it can make. So I can also give you another example of a way that I connect. I was invited in 2019 to a retreat. A friend of mine was holding it in the state of New York, and she invited 6 of her closest friends. Only a couple of them already knew each other, and we met for this retreat. And after spending a few days together, living and studying and praying and talking together, we formed a really strong connection. And then, of course, we all had to go home. Most of them live in the Northeast. One other lives in Vero Beach in Florida, and I'm here. So I looked for ways to connect. I created a text group chat. And we text regularly, particularly our joys and concerns, our prayer requests. So we share lots of things that way, and it's maintained that connection. They're some of the people when I was stuck in Amarillo that I was texting. Consider ways that you can go deeper. Perhaps there's a group that meets in a home. Lots of churches have home groups. Perhaps you can invite friends for a game night. Perhaps you can ask a friend if you can share something that's been troubling you. We have varying degrees of friendships, and some people don't have really close friendships. So one way is to talk and share with someone that is a friend and ask if you can perhaps share more deeply with them. But all of these things that I've been mentioning are things that we need to do to create connection. And that can be really hard, especially for introverts. And especially if you are feeling disconnected, it's very hard to initiate that. So I would encourage you also to look for ways that you can reach out to other people to build connection. Perhaps just at a prompting that you sense that something might be wrong or there might be a concern, or perhaps because you just think that that person would benefit from having someone else caring in their life. The good news is that connectedness does not have anything to do with numbers. You don't have to have 1,000, 100, or even 10 friends. You don't have to belong to 20 social groups or a gym, a bridge club, a church, and a cycling group. 1 or 2 individual or group connections is enough to have the quality and kind of social connection that you need. It's not about numbers. It's about the quality of that connection, and it's about how you feel internally. Positive and supportive social relationships and community connections can help buffer the effects of risk factors for suicide in people's lives. But they also just enrich our lives, all of us. To build that connectedness enriches our lives. So I want to encourage you today, as we've been talking about this and thinking about this today, has someone come to your mind that you would like to reach out and build connection with? Do that. Reach out to them. If not today, tomorrow, but I encourage you to act on it this week. It will enrich your life, and I believe that it will enrich the lives of others. And it could also save a life. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you again, Rachel. That's very timely reminder and information. Our closing song for today is Gather the Spirit, which is number 347, and the choir is going to come up and help us, and you can rise as you're willing and able to join for the song.
Thank you.
The choir makes their way back. Our closing words are entitled, What Asa Heard by David Budbill. 200 years ago, Asa heard the morning birds singing sutras to the suffering world. I heard them too this morning, which must mean, since we will always have a suffering world, we also must always have a song. Go in peace and love until we meet again.